Sul, hello, and Lapis! We're back with another Decade in Review video for the Payne Family Ultimate Decades Challenge. This time we're covering the years 1310 to 1319, and it was a wild decade, let me just say. So, in 1310, Sif gave birth to Darius's last child, who we named Idas, and both mom and baby were fine. It was our first talage year, and we had to pay 40% of our holding, which was about 18,000 simoleons, and more money than we had at that moment, but not more than we were able to collect by the deadline. Aedwulf, the child who would be heir, and Esmond both took an interest in music, but they were, well, bad, to say the least. Jelva became an infant on what would have been Selby's birthday if she was still with us. Agla trained Vilkas in sword fighting, even though she was in active labor. Agla gave birth to Vilkas' son, who he named Darius after his brother. Vilkas kept training his warrior skills in preparation for the tough life of battling the Teutonic Order he knew was ahead of himself. And Edgar aged up to a toddler successfully. Sif struggled to keep it together, being the only adult in a house full of children. Oh, and we found out that the Earl and Oakley were having a relationship. In 1311, Agla successfully aged up to a young adult. She continued to train her husband, Vilkas, in the art of sword fighting. She was definitely better than he was. Vilkas was sent on a raid against Prussia. Christmas came and went with little fanfare. The main Payne family fell into a decent routine and seemed to be making it, with Gree slowly knitting clothes for the whole family. On 12th night, Agla surprised us all when she gave birth to not one, not two, but 3 children, who we named Kenna, Vilte, and Joris. Luckily, Agla was fine, but all 3 triplets passed. Additionally, Jelva was up for an age up to toddler and was unsuccessful, which was extra sad given everything that had happened. Agla tried to plead, but death wasn't having any of it. Vilkas rolled to see if he survived the raid and was able to make it back alive, finding that he'd lost 4 of his 5 children in one fell swoop. 1311 was a tough year. In 1312, Idas aged up to a toddler, successfully. Vilkas rolled to see if he was going on raid, but he was saved from having to do that. Dovile tried to age up to a child and did not make it, but luckily Esmond, who developed a bit of a reputation as a cake thief, demanded she be spared, and Grimm actually listened. When he stole the next piece of cake, he was given a pass. The kids got to go ice skating and lost a lot of teeth in the process, and the family settled into a kind of chill routine where they would sit around and make things together. Aw, kind of precious. Darius had his toddler birthday and he was successful, and Agla had another baby. Mom was fine, baby was fine, and the child was named Seamus. In 1313, Sif and Huxley had a whirlwind romance, finding themselves getting along easily, and love came super fast. They had a beautiful community-rich wedding on St. Valentine's Day, which filled my heart to the brim. Gree had her teenage birthday, Edgar had his child birthday, and both were able to survive their roles. Aside from Briar stealing from us, it was a good year overall. In the year 1314, Agla birthed a daughter named Oshra and rolled badly, which just about broke my heart. Seriously, I was on the verge of tears. Oshra at least rolled successfully and was going to be fine, and Vilkas pled with the same desperation that I felt, and he was able to convince Grimm to give her back to us. Spring and heavy rains came in, foreshadowing the famine that would start in 1315. Not a good omen. We had to roll for our kingly visit and found he'd be visiting in the heart of the famine. Ugh. Gree and Ernan, the local spellcaster, became friends and started a nice relationship. Meanwhile in London, Harlan aged into an adult, and he was the first to survive the rolls for that life stage. Aedwulf, our heir, had his birthday to age into a teen and passed with flying colors, giving us hope. Esmond lived up to his reputation as a cake thief and was threatened with being given away. Seamus aged into a toddler, Sif also aged into an adult, and the Paynes were committed to making as much money as possible before the king could come and take their food from them. Although we were still a long way off from quit rent, it was a year that made me feel grateful for all of the good luck. In 1315, the Great Famine finally arrived and everything died. Animals, plants, bees. Idas, our last little baby, aged up to be a gloomy child, and hormones hit Cree hard. First, she found out she was extremely attracted to Aaron Mackey, a spellcaster. Then she asked the King of England for an out-of-wedlock woohoo when he came to visit their store. It was strange. Agla had another boy named Jonas. She had really found her rhythm with child making, and Vilkas flipped to not have to go on raid, getting to stay home with his family. And Gree's hormones were just simply out of control. Like, she chatted with her recent lover, the king, while daydreaming about her crush, the spellcaster Aaron Mackey. Adolf was normal. He finally got to live his horse-liver dreams of riding a horse. But Huxley slept poorly, as if he knew the coming years would bring some really bad stuff. Darius Miskinus aged up to a child, rolling well and making it easily, and the Wicks family started hanging around the Payne household at night. They knew something that many of us had forgotten. 1316 was an absolutely crazy year. In Lithuania, Oshara had her toddler birthday, which she rolled easily through. Vilkas once again avoided being sent on raid. Later that year, Agla gave birth to Sophia, and her number was up again. Luckily, at least Sophia rolled well. Vilkas, however, tried to plead with Grim, but he was not able to save the love of his life. Tears were shed. Many tears. Back in England with the main Payne family, Briar returned to steal from us. Again. Queen Isabella, the king's wife, came to check out our shop, then called and asked for what we interpreted as a bribe or payoff from Gree for sleeping with her husband. Eee. That didn't dissuade Gree, though, from meeting up with the king later and agreeing to spy on her Earl, Lancaster. Or from sleeping with him again. She then went to break into Lancaster's home looking for evidence of some wrongdoing, but she was seen meeting with the king by her crush, the spellcaster Ernan. Esmond has his teenage birthday and rolled on through, and we introduced the Great Famine travel roll, which represented the high crime rates during the famine. During that year, we were only stolen from along the way. Ernan then contacted Gree to tell her he had a crush on her, and Gree then spent some time at the archery competition chatting with the Earl of Lancaster to try and find some dirt for the king. That night, she was meant to meet the king, but was kidnapped along the way. In all the chaos, Huxley's birthday was forgotten and he had to do it on his own. Sadly, he rolled badly. Sif pled for her second husband and Grim was merciful. The comments gave rise to their ship name, Hif. In London, Aiken II, the only survivor from Gen 1 Deauville's line, was up for his teenage birthday and was able to survive that. Harlan, his father, had autonomously married a woman who had a vampire child, which, I don't know what to do with. We rolled for the famine at the Brewers that year, and there was only one loss, Harlan. That meant that the only survivor from the original Gen 1 was Vilkas. Oh, and we found out that Gree was trapped in a well, but didn't know by who. See what I mean about it being a crazy year? In 1317, we earned a load of money from our shop, squeezing it in before the Earl came and took all our stuff and a metric shirt ton of money. Still, our finances increased and we felt like we were making headway. Even though everyone was worried about Gree, they couldn't do much and just kind of kept going through their lives. When we went out for hunting and foraging, we were attacked and Huxley was murdered, though you couldn't really tell who was murdered from the number of Sims dropping to the ground. I almost thought it was the Black Plague already instead of the famine. Somehow, we were able to save Huxley again, making him the luckiest Sim ever. The family were definitely under suspicion when both the king and the Earl of Lancaster visited, both of them asking about Gree, and during that time, the king yelled at Huxley, but the big question was whether that was to protect him from the Earl or not. I don't even know sometimes with this story. However, when we went to help Jonas with his birthday, he was unlucky with his rolls and we lost him because Elzbieta, Agla's sister, developed a fear of death at the last second, ruining our chance and giving rise to her becoming the most hated sim. Meanwhile, Gree gave birth from inside of the well we last saw her in to a pair of illegitimate royal twins, a boy and a girl named Adam and Eleanor. We found out that it was a magically protected place that she'd been taken to by Ernan, her crush. Young love? We almost lost Gree in the process, but she was saved by Ernan's magical death flower. Oh, and the babies were totally fine. Meanwhile, Seamus Miskinus aged up to a child easily, helped along by a visit from his deceased siblings. His grandfather Danielus aged up to an elder successfully, and everything seemed fine in Lithuania, where the Great Famine didn't make it and therefore required no famine survival rolls. Unfortunately, that meant we were on the last day of 1317 and had to face down the Great Famine rolls with our main family, though not before tragedy struck. High on our success of not being truly gotten while traveling, I made the epic mistake of sending our children to the shop. Why? I don't know, but it happened before I'd rolled to see what fate would give us that time we traveled, and it dealt us a severe blow when little Edgar didn't make it back. The Great Famine rules were relatively fair, and only 2 out of the remaining 6 in our family were struck down. While we were able to save one, we lost the other permanently. Goodbye, Sif. 1318 started with an omen of bad things to come when we loaded the game straight into a fire, and due to high crime post-famine periods, we started the year with 51,000 simoleons, but finished with only about 35,000. I'm just thankful no one was attacked. Now that the famine itself was over, we finally got to get some animals again and could begin working our fields so that we could, feed ourselves. At the same time, the debt that Selby incurred in 1301 to save Darius was finally due. During the night, we saw the witches calculating the debt, which was youth, which meant one sim had to age up through 3 birthdays back to back. This debt fell to the heir, Aedwulf, and the witches came to collect. He made it through 2 of the rolls, but when he got to the elder roll, he just couldn't do it, and he passed away in his sleep from old age, even though he was only 16. This made the cake thief Esmond our heir, and he took it pretty hard. However, he did immediately fall in love when he went out, setting himself up for success as the next heir in at least one way. In Lithuania, Sophia Miskinus, the last of Agla's children, had her toddler roll and was easily able to age up. We flipped to see if they'd raid, and Danielus left for raid, but Vilcus got to stay home. Danielus had terrible odds for surviving the raid, but he made it. And Vilcus finally had his adult roll, and for the first time ever, he rolled badly. Luckily, Seamus was able to plead to save him. And so, for the Miskinus line, 1318 came to a close with family, both living and dead, surrounding them. In 1319, Oshara revealed a violent side, and we let her take it out on Elzbieta. Twice. As soon as she successfully aged up to a child, she took to the bow and arrow. I think we're seeing the making of another warrior girl. Dovili aged up to a teen successfully and found she would get married and have 7 baby tries, and she looked so much like her mom Sif, it was a little unnerving. The main family also had a great midsummer festival day, bringing some light back into their lives. Oh, and when we went to meet Esmond's Lady Love's father, we found out that Briar Brewer had married into that family. You know, the Briar who had stolen from us? The Briar who had an ongoing hatred of our family? She just will not leave us alone. Over with Gree and Ernan, Eleanor and Adam had their toddler birthdays. They were still protected in the cabin, and they made it through their roles. Ernan and Gree said their goodbyes before he left for the duel to the death that he was destined to have with his sister. While Ernan was away, a knight arrived at the cabin announcing that the king needed Gree to come to Windenburg with their children, and that the king had arranged a new life for her there. She was forced to leave, nothing but a note on the table to help Ernan find out where she had gone, not knowing what had happened to him, and not knowing what her future would bring. Her and us both, honestly. All in all, we lost 10 Sims this decade. Our average age of death is now 17.77, which is lower than the 20 and a third from the previous decade. While we discovered that this family is especially loved by Grimm, it was a really tough decade because the losses were concentrated in a very specific set of years. Hopefully next decade, there's a little bit less wild drama. See you all in 1320. Bye bye, everyone.